Good evening once again. Welcome to another training session on JavaScript. This is JavaScript 105 and we're going to be talking about loops. Loop allow you to run through a specific block of code several times. And of course, even as simple as it is, there's a lot that you can achieve by you being able to repeat something several times. So you will notice if you look at the environment that you are in, or you look at computer, you will notice that computer does a lot of repetitive things. So if that is the case, it means there must be something that is in charge of making sure that something repeats based on some conditions. We're going to be running some sample codes that you are going to be seeing. You are going to be enlightened about, oh, so this is how things work in terms of looping. So this is what looping is all about. Let's get straight into it. We shouldn't spend so much time on looping. You have 5 ways in which you can loop, and we're going to take each of the methods one after the other. You are not really required to use all the methods. You can use the one that you are most comfortable with, as far as the case is, because most of the time, depend on the problem you are facing will determine the kind of method you are going to use. So we start with a very popular one, which is the for loop. That's the way it is called. So what I want to write now is the syntax in which the for loop is being presented. I'll start by specifying for and open a bracket, and this bracket requires you to put set of expressions, and after those expressions you can then define your block of codes. Now look at what this is now. I want to write it this way so that way it's very easy to look at. So you put your for because you are doing a loop. So you say for this argument, do these loops. That's what you are about to do. All the code within this block is what you repeat based on the conditions you are about to enter your parameter. That's in line 3. So we're about to enter all the expressions available now. I can start with expression 1. I will define what all the expressions are. Then expression 2. Then expression 3. So you have 3 expressions that you can literally capture to define how your loop will work. That's the syntax to write the for loop. This is the first type of loop, and that loop is called the for loop. That's the name of this loop. Now we start defining the parameters that we need to capture in these brackets. The expression 1 is executed first before anything. When your interpreter sees this code and it gets to line 4, this is the code is going to run first. That's the expression 1. And what happens in the expression 1 is that the code is run once before anything happens. So this part here is mostly to initialize a counter, because you are looping through a set of codes. That's the intention. Looping is about running a set of code X number of times. We don't know yet how many times we want to run it. You will get to understand the number of times now, that depending on your program will determine how many times you want to run that piece of code. But just know that the first thing that you have in your expression runs one, and majorly it's for initializing your counter. If it's for initializing my counter, I can say let C denoting my counter is equal to 0. So that serves that purpose of our first expression. The second expression defines the condition for executing the code block. This section is what will determine if this section will work. That's line 5. My code that will run continuously is to be on line 5, and the expression number 2 is a condition that must take place before that code runs. So let's go ahead and put an expression and say whenever C is less than 10, anytime C is know that C is 0 here, just notice what happened, and this section runs 1. Then I come here and say that as long as C is less than 10, this code in line 5 will work. The next expression is executed every time. It's executed every time after the code block has been ended. So look at this now from line 4. If you run this code, the code will run here to 6. The first expression runs how many times? Once. The second expression is a condition for the code block to run. The last expression, which is expression number 3, runs every time. So if something runs every time, that is a good place for me to increment my initialization of what C is, because my C is 0. So now I can decide to say, oh, I want my C, I want to increment my C. So I can say C is equal to C plus 1. What that does is that it increments the value of C here. Let's now log and see if this system will run 10 times, because that's what this code says. What I've just written here is that I want this code, the piece of code that will be inside line 5, to run 10 times. That is what I've written here. So let's go ahead and give it a try and see if that will work. Of course, we need to do our console. Okay. I will do that. Okay. Let me just call it expression 1 here like this. Then let's go to expression 2. Expression 2 is the condition for the loop to occur. That's what will make the loop happen. Without that condition, the loop would not happen. So we can do expression 2. Then expression 3, which is the third one, is to increment the counter. To increment the counter so that it will eventually terminate. So if I use short form to express this, I will say this is initialization and this is condition, and I will say this is termination. Let me say termination or something like that. So let me express what 1 is, and I will now slot the code inside as I express it. So the first code says that is to define a counter. So let's define what we want to do. What we want to do is to write 1 to 10. That's what we want to do. So since we want to write 1 to 10, we need to initialize a counter, a variable that will be using to count, to know when it is the first run, to know when it's the second run, to know when it's the third run. So we need a variable to do that for us. And we've known that this section is used for initialization. So already you know how to declare a variable. So you can say let I want to use I now, is equal to 0. The purpose of this section is to initialize the variable, because it's I that we want to be using to be counting to get to 10. We already know the example we want to write. Count to 10. That's what we want to do. Now that I've finished the first part of the expression, which is expression number 1, let's go to expression number 2. And what the expression number 2 says is, what condition should we meet for this code to run? That's number 8. For the line anything in number 8 to run, what code should we meet? It's a conditional statement. Remember, you already know condition, how condition work. But in this case, you're not going to put if. Those times when we're doing if, in brackets, let me write the syntax for if for you. So you say if, the condition that we normally write, I is less than, 10 and what have you. This is where we normally write if condition. So in this case, you just need to write only this conditional statement. Remember when I was defining if statement for you, I said this is inside here is the condition that will happen. So the condition that will make this code run is when it is less than 10. Whenever I is less than 10, it should be executing what is inside here. So if you think about it very well, that's the only time this part should work. Because at this point that I is equal to 0, it should work. Whenever I comes to 2, it should work. Whenever I comes to 9, it should work. But when I is now more than 10 or equal to 10, it should not work. So the condition that it should work is when I is less than 10. That's how I came to about 10 here. And the last one here is to increment the I such that it will get to 10 eventually. That's the purpose of the last part. You need to find a way to increment the I. And how do you increment the I? Is by saying I++. So when you do I++, it will plus the current value of I and add 1 to it. That's what I++ does. Whatever I is, add 1 to it. So you have I++, you have I minus. It does the opposite. Minus does the opposite. We'll get to you. So I'm introducing something new to you guys now, which is the plus. So just take this as a shorthand for I is equal to I+1. So this is a shorthand. what we want to print out is what? Our I. We want to see what our I will say. So you might also face this when you are running this. The reason is because at this point the system was running the console and the browser got hooked up, the editor got hung, so I need to restart it. So you might not see your results when you are writing this like this as well. What I did is to restart it. I'm going to do that again now because you might face the exact same thing. The reason why we have to do that is because we are looking at the code live. We turn on the live editor, so at some point it just got hung. So let's try it again and see. So if we did that run, look at our results on the bottom. So we have the code running from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right? So let's now see why is it not doing 1 to 10? It's doing 0 to 9. It's purely what you said it should do. If you look at it very well, that's what it's doing. You told it that I is 0, and that's why it has put 0 first, because it ran the code first here, and that's why you have 0 here. And this one happens I++, which is whatever I is, which is 0 plus 1, it now begins counting from 1 like that. This code runs at the end of this iteration. So whatever happens here, this code will run at the end. So let's adjust it by saying, oh, okay, let's initialize to be 1 first. So if you initialize to be 1 and you try your code, you can see that your code starts from 1 but terminates at 9. And the reason is because of what you've written here. Your concern is that it should be when it is less than 10. That's when you want it to terminate. If you want it to get to 10, you have to say less than or equal to 10. So meaning it should keep going until it's less than or equal to 10. That's when it should stop. So that's how we have something like that. And you can adjust it. Say, okay, you want to run count to 5. You can also do that and say, okay, your target is 5. And you change this and you have this result. You have this result counting to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what we are saying in essence is that this bit of code is running 5 times. We've just run this section 5 times. And let's now go and do some examples so that you can understand the benefits or how it can be of great value. Why do you need to do this? Again, the purpose is so that you can run the code as many times as you want based on the situation. So I want to do an example now. Write times table. Design 4 times table. You know this times table now for kids, 2 times 1, 2 times 3, so like that. So we want to do something like that. So if you wanted to do it without a loop, you know what you are going to do now. You are going to be doing it manually without using a loop. So we want to do 4 times table to 12. That's 4 times 1, 4, 4 times 2, 8, 4 times 3, 12. I want to do that for you guys to see. So the first thing is that we're running from 1 to 12 because we're going to be using 4 as our constant. So let's define our constant, and that will be, so I'll just say x table. So our x table, that's 4 times table is 4 that we're using, right? And I want to go from 1 to 12. So I make this 12, which is cool, good, okay. Then the next thing is that I want to be able to print out on the screen and denote and say 4, which is our constant, that's x table. Remember this variable thing that we did, then I'll do x table. What this allows us to do is to print our 4 alone 12 times. You can see there on the bottom, it's printing it 12 times. The reason why it's putting 12 in circle is because there's no difference in what it's printing. It's just repeating itself. Then I have it times, what am I timesing it with? I. I is our illustrator that keeps changing because there's a counter that keep track of it. I can use the same method I used here by using this, so that I won't worry about doing concatenation. Now it comes this way. Look at your result on the bottom. It's saying 4 times 1, 4 times 2, like that, like that, like that. So we're about to put a valid result in the front. Then I go ahead and put my equal sign. Then finally, I can then define my variable that will hold my results. Let's go and say L is equal to results. Then I can do my results my result is equal to the times table, that's the 4 multiplied by the current I, the current illustrator, which is 1. Then whatever it is will be my result here. Then I can use this and do like this. So look at your timetable coming on the bottom, 4 times 1, 4, like that. So this is a good example of using illustrator, like one of the easy example that I can use to explain to you. So imagine you want to do 5 times table. Very easy. What do? You just change this to like 5, and then the system plots your 5 times table for you. So I just put, let's say 25 for example. Then you have this timetable here. So this is how apps work. Talking about the fact that I want to challenge your mind to add 1 or 2 things to what we have, so that to make it a little bit interesting. I want to do loop in a loop. Design 3 different times table, right? That's what I want to do. Let me make it fixed. I want to do 4 times table, I want to do 5 times table, and I want to do 6 times table together. So how do I achieve that? I can achieve that by using a loop in a loop. What that means is that I want to do a nested loop. So it means that there will need to be a loop first that will first go through 4, it will go through 5, it will go through 6. Once the loop is in 4, it will do all these things. The loop will be on 5, it will do all these things. The loop will be on 6, it will do all these things. That's what I want to write, for you guys to see. So how do we achieve a loop in a loop? What I want to do with this loop is to make it in such a way that I can nest it inside another loop that will be on top. So this one then will be changeable. This X table will now be 4, 5, and 6. Is something that should be changeable. So how do I introduce that? I will come here and add a new loop on top, because I want to create another additional loop on top. And the purpose of that loop is such that I can go through 4, 5, and 6 timetable at the same time. What this current solution does for us is just that we can run only 1 timetable, at a go. So we can run 4 times table, if we so wish. We can run 5, but solution I want to do now is to run like 3 different times table at the same time. That's what I want to do. So to do that, I need to put another loop on top, and the purpose of that is to first loop through 4, 5, and 6. And while doing that, it will be executing this on its own. So instead of me manually saying 4, and it will do this, and then coming back here to say 5, and I will see my result, and coming here again to say 6, and then I will see my results. I want to write a code that will just run the 3 at the same time. And the solution is for us to put what? To put a loop above what we have here, so that this loop will now be inside and that loop will be outside, meaning you can have a loop in a loop. Okay, let's go ahead. So let's start from our for loop. And number 1, the initialization. The initialization of this one is the X timetable. So I say my let X table equal to, remember we're starting from 4. So I can say start from 4. And then what's my condition? My condition is that when it's less than 7, that's when it should stop. Then I will say my X table, when it's less than 7, that's when it should stop. And what then does with the count? How do we increment it? We increment it by doing X table plus plus. That's how it increments. And immediately it gets to 7, it will stop. So let's test what we've done so far now and see if it will write 4, 5, 6, 7, 4, 5, 6. So that's what I want to test now. I just remove all this and I test my results. I should be expecting to see 4, 5, 6. This is very simple. We already know this already. This is how loop works, using the for loop. This is just the first method. The other method will just run through them because it follows the same pattern. The intention is that we want to run this times table, 4 times table, 5 times table, 6 times table. That's what we want to write. So here I will just say 4 times table, right? And then on the bottom I can do something like this just for graphics sake, to just do a kind of a dash. On the bottom is supposed to have the list of the timetable. So inside each of the times table, I want to write another loop, and this loop now will get to 12 because I want to run each of the times table to get to 12. So then I start writing my code here. Let's go ahead. I will repeat the same thing, but this time around is the times I'm using. Let my times, because the times I want it to get to 12. So my times that is counting, 4 times 1, 4 times 2, 4 times 3. That's the times I'm talking about, the other part. I start from 1. That's the initialization. The second part is I want to target where to stop. We're targeting to stop at 12. Then I do times is less than 12. We can do less than or equal to 12, or we can say 13. We know it won't get 13. Then we do our counter. Our counter, to increment it is times plus plus. And then we can then come and run our code here inside the block. So look at what is happening here. The first execution happens here. The beginning, we are inside a loop. So this is what they call a loop in a loop. So this loop we run 12 times after this one has run. So let's go ahead and start with the console log and see what happens. If I do console log, let me just put this here. This is the table, the first one, and then I can then do times. This one is going to be changing based on the current loop condition that you're in. This X table is going to be changing from 4 to 5 to 6. So, and that's what I want to multiply by the times here, which is also going to be changing when this inner loop is also incrementing. So I have this like this, and I can do equal sign. But before we get the result, just look at what is happening before we get the result. So look at from the beginning, it says 4 times table. You can get the 4 times table. Then it's continue again 5 times table and give us 5 times table. Then 6 times table and give us 6 times table. Then we can continue with the solution that we have here, having our result and finally giving us our answer. So you can initialize, let's say, let our results, just define your results, initialize it. Then we can do results is equal to, we are doing table times here. So I do table times will give us our result. So I can come here and do my value here. So there you go, you have your results. So this is 4 times table, and we have this whole thing coming up here, and then you have your 5 times table, you have this whole thing coming up here, and then you have 6 times table. This was achieved using a loop in a loop. In fact, you can go deep as you want, depending on the problem that you are solving or challenges that you are currently facing, will determine how you can structure your code. Do while loop. So from the name, do is a keyword, while is also a keyword. So how is the syntax written? This is the format in which you write your do while. You write your do, and then you continue with your code block, and you write your while keyword as well. Reading this in plain English is that do this bunch of things here while this condition is met. Meaning you have to do all these things while this condition is met. So it has to happen like that. You will notice that in this case, there's no initialization, there's no first expression, there's no second expression, there's no third expression. Those first expression and third expression are done outside. You are going to see those first and last expression. In the for loop, remember the 3 expressions. Those things are very key. The first expression is to initialize it, and the last expression is to what? Is to increment it. Notice in this case, you only have what? One of the expression, which is expression number 2, which is the condition 1. And that's why these ones are not well used, because it is not clear when you initialize it. It is not clear where you are counting it. So let's do an example. So I want to initialize it. It allows you to initialize it outside the the syntax. You can do it somewhere else. That brings room for error or for bug to crop up in your code. So let's go ahead and initialize something that we want to use, for our counter, because that counter is always what you need, to determine how many loop or how often you want your code to run. So that counter is very key. So I can say C is equal to 0. So that's the counter there. Notice what this code is saying. So the code will run at least once before the condition will be checked. I want to make sure that the C is being referenced and is showing. While we can come here and do our incremental. That's I++. Remember what I mentioned the other time, that our increment must be done, because you need the condition. That's the point. Your condition must be true before this will happen. And most of the time, these are the things you use. You have to use numbers because you're counting. So my condition now is that when I is less than 10, you can see what is happening in the console. I told you that whenever you are running your loop for the first time, you might run through this. What is happening here now? So you might need to shut down your browser, or rather your Visual Studio Code, and restart it again, because when you write a code, you can see that the code just came up by itself, because anytime I type a code, the program has gone to execute. So even though, because you can easily write infinite loop with this, and when you write infinite loop, your program will never stop. It will keep running, and that could trigger a bug in your platform. So the reason why I have to shut down is because the Visual Studio Code is executing per keystroke. So this program will not run again, because I might have written something that ended up in an infinite loop. So but now that the code looks okay, it won't still run, because that infinite loop is running in the background as we are talking. So I need to close the browser. So when you are doing this test, whenever you got stuck and anything is not showing like this, make sure you turn off your browser and on it again, your Visual Studio Code, and run it again. So let's put it off and put it on again. Ahead and show you that result again. So if I come in here, you can see that our code is executing proper 0 to 9. Again, if you want to do 0 to 10, you have to start from 1, and then you tell it that when it's less than 11, that's when it should stop. So you have that same thing that we did, your loop. So you can go the same way and do the same timetable using do while. The recommended or the preferred looping system is the for loop. This one, you can see that this one, you have to now specify the counter, and this you have to initialize outside the syntax. The for loop forces you to do your initialization within the syntax. That way you are always covered. The while loop. The while loop makes sure that the condition is met first before the loop starts. So let's see how the while loop syntax is written, which is also very simple. While the condition is met, what should happen? We'll execute this code. Very simple and straightforward. While the condition executes what is in the bracket. That is the process on how this one works. And we can use the same example that we used the other time. So how do we start with this example? You need a counter. Remember, any loop that you're running, you need those three things. You need a counter, or rather you need a counter. That's a form of initialization. You need a condition, and you need an increment so that it will meet your condition. Those are the three terms or three requirements in your looping platform. But this syntax, the two syntax that we've looked at now, they didn't have those things. They just gives you a way to do it yourself without forcing you. They don't want to force you. They just expect you that maybe you get it, you understand the complexity, and you can handle it yourself. So I can say let I is equal to 0. That's my counter. Let's say 1, because we want to do 1 to 10. So let's say 1, and let me just write my console now. I have not put my condition. I want to put my console. So my console is, I want to log I. Then my condition. Before I put my condition, I want to also put my counter at the end of everything. I want it to count. So how do I count? I++. right? I've told you what I++ is. It's just to increment by 1. That's what it's doing. My condition is now that when I is less than 11. So again, we've run into that issue. So you can see that issue has also occurred. Again, I have to restart the browser. Let's go ahead and run the code and see what it does. So you can see it runs perfectly well, 1 to 10. Even though this code looks very easy, as I've said to you, you can see that your initialization is done somewhere in the code, far somewhere in the code. Your counter is also done inside. It gives room for error. You can mix things up easily, but the for loop is consistent. Let's move to the next thing. It's gonna get interesting very soon, because this example will introduce you to something we've done before, which is objects and array. This method is a way for you to loop through array and objects, and that is called for in and the for off. For in and the for off, those are two different kind of looping system that we want to look into. In JavaScript, the for in statement loops through the properties of an object. Even though by the time we'll get to talk about object and array in depth, you should at least know how to loop through these guys, right? So that's the purpose of going through these stuffs. And we're going to be presenting some objects, to loop through, and we're going to see how you can do that. So let's do example of objects. In fact, I'll be taking the for in and the for off. So let's go ahead and define an object. So I will do let cars. You know how to define an object. Curly bracket defines an object. Remember, we said the property of a car, we can say the engine, 55 horsepower. Then we can say make Jeep doors, 4 doors. So this is an object that has these properties, right? Engine, type, and doors. These are properties, and we said that to loop through the properties, you can use what? The in to loop through the properties. And you can also loop the properties of an array, because these are objects. I'm sure you know the difference between these guys now. These are objects. Array and objects are very interesting things that you guys will be working with. So it's very important that you pay close attention to when I'm talking about arrays and objects. So here I can say people, and I want to do Mike, I want to do James, I want to do Sam. So these are different variables that we want to look through, and for you to see their results, so that you will know when and how to use for in and for off, and the benefits, and which one is it you are using based on the requirements or what you want to achieve. Everything here is based on what you want to achieve. So let's loop through objects and see. The syntax for looping through objects or array is as follows. You use your for, very easy, and you use your parentheses. In this case, I will skip that and introduce the block of code immediately. So what do you now put inside here is very interesting, because the syntax says for in and for off. So this in, you are saying that for every item that is inside the object. That's why they said in. So it's like for every item, because look at these cars now. There are items or properties inside them. This car has engine property, has type property, and has doors property. So you are saying for every item inside this object. So you can then define this as what? For every item inside cars. While this item here is your own variable defined, and this cars is what you've defined here. So therefore, you need to define this variable. I always, you can leave it like this, but by default it's defined. So this item is now a new variable that is used inside your code here. This item that you said here is a new variable, but this cars is already defined up here. That's the variable here. You can use this item inside here. You can call it anything. You can call it C. You can call it anything, but this variable is not available for you to use inside here. To be more specific, you can say let C in cars. So meaning that C should be one of the property inside cars. You should be looping through all the properties inside car until you finish all, it has gone through all the properties. So let's console log C and let's see what C is holding. Now, do you see the results? We are looping through the properties. When you use in, you are looping through the properties of the cars, the engine, the types, the door. You have that there. So the question is, how do you then get the value? How do you get the value of the engine? How do you get the value of the door? Like, you know that the door, the value is 4. How do you get that using this system? Of course, you know you can always get this by doing cars.engine, but you can't do, if you do that here, you can't get that result because C itself is giving you the property name. So let's go outside and let me show you how to get the property value here, so you know what you are dealing with. This is now object which we've done before, though this is like repetition of a class that we've passed. To get the item inside this, how do you get the item inside this? You do cars dot. Do you see that it gives you access to specify what it is that you want? So when you say dot engine, you give it 55 horsepower. That's how to access the data inside here. But there is another way as well. Apart from using this method, you can use the array method to get the value. But this time around, this will be passed as a variable. So this is another form in which you can get the value of what? Of the property of an object by passing the value as a string inside the car. You get this result. Let me do that again. So by doing like this, cars and the property name, you get this. By doing cars and this, you get this. You will be able to get this result. This is for object. For array, this is how to do for array. For array, you specify the people, and instead of specifying this value, it will be numbers. Remember, we did array value. You were able to get the value of the array by indicating that this one is number 0, this number 1, and this number 3. We saw that when we were doing array. I can easily access James by saying 1, and it gives me James. I can access Sam by saying 2, and it will give me Sam. But in object is different. Object is by specifying the property name like this, and you get the result. So having known that, let's go back to our loop and see how we can achieve that again. Note that this is the property name C. Then we want to get the value. I want to write out something here now. Follow me. So what I want to do now is I want to say the property of C, the property engine is, I will use this format here, cars in brackets C. Let's go ahead. Cars, which is this car here. To access each of the parameter here, you know I'm already looping through the parameter because each of the parameter is saying engine, type, doors. So how do I put engine, types, door inside here? I will just specify this bracket, and the C carries the engine, types, door, and I'll put my C there, and it gives me this beautiful results. The property engine is 55 horsepower. The property type is Jeep. The property doors is 4. That's how I'm able to get this. Now look at the way I got this value. Cars and the C there. So going back again to my definition, this looping system allows you to get the property name so that you can manipulate the object and get the property value. This is how I was able to get the property value. Cars in brackets C, because the C was defined here. Now this is getting objects. So let's loop through array and see our results. So I say for let's use I now. I in people console log I to see what is happening with our I. It gives us the index of the array. Look at the array, Mike, James, and Sam. The positioning of each of these items is calculated in the system by starting from 0. And that's why our result is giving us 0, 1, 2. So how can you display this Mike, James, Sam in this loop? Is by doing a similar method like this. We are going to use this similar method, very easy, similar method like this. And then I change these cars to people and I change this to I again. Then I can write the proper English and say the index I is this, and that expresses that the index 0 is Mike, the index I is James, and the index 2 is Sam. So this is using the in. Now if I want to use the off, it's more beneficiary to array than beneficiary to the objects. So if you wanted to pick the Mike, James, and Sam, you can use off, meaning you are not really interested in the index. So let's go ahead and print out our I and change this to off, and then you see the results. So you can see that using off, it just gives us the value directly. So you can see that if we use off, it will give us this value. So using in, it will give you the index, but it doesn't work this way with objects. If you put objects there, it works differently with objects. If you use in, it gives us the property. If you use off, it's going to give you an error. It doesn't work that way. I want to do something sophisticated, right? That way you get to understand what I just did now. Let's do a small app, and let me tell you what the app is going to be all about, so that we can start picturing solution in our head. So let me write down the notion of what we're going to do. Create an object person with children. Let's first create the object, then I'll tell you what we want to do with the object. A person object this is one person. This is an array. Array can hold multiple objects. Inside it, we have one object already, and the object is carrying the name, property, and is carrying children. Inside the children, we also have an array that is carrying just one child. And what I want to do is I want it to carry multiple children. That's the idea. So, and again, the people is going to carry multiple people, but we are doing it step by step. So let's go ahead and duplicate this person. This is the object that we have. So let's go ahead with the problem definition. So look at what we've been asked to do now. Display the name of the parent and number of children and number of gender as well. So I'm expecting something like this. Mike has 2 children. Yeah, 1 male, 1 female. This is what I want you guys to do, or this is what we want to do. Then the second answer will be, first of all, you need to be able to understand what you are being asked to do. Looking at the results that we have, notice that you are going to be looping through, first of all, looping through the array. This is an array that has 2 objects, 1, 2. So let's first start from there. Let's loop through the array. Don't be too much in a rush. When you have a problem that you want to tackle like this, the fundamental thing you need to know is to break it down into the minimum solution. So first of all, you see Mike here. Let's first even see, let it print Mike. This Mike that you are seeing here, and you know it's very easy for us to do. Let it first print Mike before you start worrying about how do you find 2 children. Then before you worried about how do we say the number of males, before you worried about how do you say the number of females. So let's tackle it gradually. So what's the first thing to do first? let it display the name of the parents first. So we do for. Remember that the person here is your own variable that you are defining. The people here is what has been available already. So this is the loop. To this loop, we loop through what? We loop through an array of this and of this. Another thing again you want to be doing for yourself is, as you loop, also print out the results. Me, I already know how to go about this, but because you are just learning, you want to be dumping the results immediately as you are looping, so that you can see how the object is defined and you can know what to do next. So let's print out our results. So this helps you to understand the structure of what you are working with. If I come here, now look at what it did. Remember what our in does. Our in gives us the index of the array. Our array is 2. So which is we use the in. If we use the of, it's going to give us the value, which is the object. So for this case, we can use of because we're interested on the value. Immediately you use of, look at the new results that we have. Did you see how we structure it? It gives us the object, which is wonderful. Remember what we are interested in now. We're interested in Mike and James. So we want to write our story. So we keep this one for now. Let it be giving us this. And we now write our Mike has. So let's write that console.log and say, so how do you dump Mike? How do you capture this Mike? To capture this Mike guy, it will be person.name. That's this person here. Person.name. Look at the hierarchy. Do you see this person is carrying name? So you can easily say person.name. So remember how you can dump everything in your variable. Use your $sign, use this curly braces, and you do person.name. Immediately you do that, let's check what we have in our results. You can see the name James comes out. Mike came out. So I can say Mike or James has. We've done that one. How do I know the number of children that Mike has? I can easily find the solution to this, but I don't want to use a cheap method. I can easily find the solution to this, but I want to do it the hard way. No reason for the reason is just to show you how loop works, right? That's the reason I want to show you the hard way to do it. The way to do it is just to call the array function, and it will give me the number of elements inside. I will know the children that it has if I use that method, right? But again, the reason is I want to show you how loop works. So look at what we are doing. Mike has 2. So how do I know this that is 2? I need to loop through the children. Let me loop through the children to count how many they are. I want to loop through the children to count how many they are. So let me come here and see. If I do person.children, I then have that value in place. Is in there. Of course, I can see their number here, but I want to count it myself using code to count it. Introduce this. Let child. So I'm counting each of the. I want to focus on each of the child now. Let child. I can use in on off. Again, it's preference. You know, when you use in, it will use what? The value. When you use off, it will use the objects depending on what you are dealing with. So as I've said, you can be testing what you are getting in the result to see if that's what you want. So let's use in. Remember what you are looping through. You are looping to person.children. So I'm looping through person.children. So when I do this, console log my child. When you log this, did you notice what it has? It's listing all the indexes of what? The array that you have there. When you use the of, do you see it listed the name that is Peter, it listed the name, it listed the gender. I've been able to loop through the children. While I loop through the children, it means I can actually count the children while I'm looping through them. Because here I loop through it, you can see that it gave me their name. I can actually set up a counter and count the children. So I will just come in here and say what I would do here is that whenever I start it, I want to initialize the number of children to be 0. Before I do anything, the number of children should be 0. Then when I'm starting to count the children, I can then do child plus plus. That's number of children plus plus. So that at the end of the loop, I can come and see the number of children that have been counted. So I will now say has, so let me put this one here so that it can look like this. So let me comment this out. So if you now see, you can see Mike has 2, I can then say children. So we're getting somewhere. Mike has 2 children, James has 3 children. So let's go to the next thing. 2 children. How do you specify the number of male and female that you have? Very important. How do you remember what this number of children does? What it does is that it just counts all of them. How do you count if one is male and the other one is female? How do you do the counting? Very easy. So let's declare what we are going to use to hold the number of male and what we are going to use to hold the number of female. And there are easier ways to declare all these things is by using comma. And this way it just makes our code more easier to read or more shorter. So you can use any which one that is preferable. So I'm saying let number of male, let number of female. I'm defining them as not defined here. So by default, they should all be 0 once they come inside the loop. Immediately you start counting, you enter the loop of persons, initialize them to be 0. First of all, once you start coming into that scope that you are starting looking through person, because the first time you go to Mike, you initialize it. When you are now going through the children, then start counting. This is where I can now make a decision to check if it is a male or it is a female. How do you check if it's a male or a female? We already have that information inside child. Inside child, we have a parameter that says gender. So you can check if it is a male. If it is a male, you do number underscore male plus plus. If it is a female, then you do otherwise. And again, this is to talk to the if that we've learnt. Let's go ahead and use the if condition that we've learnt. I do if, and what's the condition? If child dot gender is what? Is equal to male. What should happen? It should do number underscore m plus plus. What if it is not? Obviously it means it's a female. We are not doing non-binary here. It's either you're a male or a female. You can't be in between. If it is male, it does this. If it is female, then we count the female part of it, and that execute the code. That way we've already captured value inside this section. What we just need to do is to go and dump it out there in the variable declaration. So let's dump it out and see our results. Let's look at how it reads. It reads this way: 1 male, 1 female. So let's go. How do you do that? Comma. Then you specify the number of male by doing our $sign. What variable is holding our male underscore m? Then you can already see in our result, Mike has 2 children, 1, 2. It's already showing the male. So we type our male, and we also provide our number of female, fm, and we can write our female in full. So that is the solution to what we have. So you can see Mike has 2 children, 1 male, 1 female. James has 3 children, 2 male, 1 female. And you can go on and on. Very easy. You can find the average of their age using this same loop system. And you can see the idea of what loops bring to the table. It allows you to run one same code. We ran it twice. One code that was used to be able to find this information, we ran it, it ran twice, and it was also used to execute this. So no matter how much data you pass to the system now, if I increase the number of children to minimum, for example, and I do 11 and I change this guy to female, the system just knows what to do, right? Your code just gets to do what it is. And that's what programming is all about. You feed in data to it and then it gives you the output. Example. Let me quickly show you what the assignment is all about. The assignment is similar to what I just did, because I know that what I just did is gonna require you to do quite a lot in terms of understanding, and I've done something similar. I've provided another people object whereby you have the name, you have the age, and then you have the cars that this person has. This same thing again, you have the cars. This time around, this person doesn't have any car. So these are the tasks they are supposed to perform. Find the average age of the people, like these people here, the average age. So you can say, you can write your console, the average age of James, Samuel, and Peter is so, right? Then the second one says find all cars owned by a person. So you can say James owned 4 cars, Samuel owned 2 cars, Peter owned no cars. You count all the cars. So all the cars are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cars. So this example of what exactly I just did here. Thank you for staying to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on bell notification in order to be notified when we release new videos. See you in the next one.